Hello there, good people. My name is Marco. Welcome to my channel, and today I'm gonna go on with the Python projects for beginners. I will link in the description below the website with the actual projects, and today we are at number 2, which is number guessing. So number guessing, as you can see on the website, number guessing is kind of a game. I gotta be honest with you, I didn't have much hope for this one because it is a very simple project. But I gotta say that I've learned something new, and probably this is why you shouldn't skip beginner project, because you can always learn something new, you know. So let's get going. I am in my project folder, and via the terminal I'm gonna create my file, and I'm gonna call it numguessing.py. FYI, PyCharm allows you to create projects, to create file very easily. I'm not gonna do that because, you know, since I want to be accepted in the cool kids club, I want to use the terminal. So let's get back to it. Okay, so now my file should be right here. Okay, so the first thing, if we look at the assignment, is that we gotta make a program in which the computer randomly chooses a number between 1 to 10, 1 to 100, or any range. So the keyword here is randomly. And I got actually perfect solution, which is to import a random module in Python, which is in the standard library. And the random module actually has a couple of cool methods to choose a random number. The first one is actually random range. And what random range needs is a start, an end, and a step. So like this, I'm gonna generate integers. I honestly don't like this method too much, because there is another one which is made for generating integers number, which is randint. And what it needs is basically a start and an end. I'm gonna assign this to a variable, call it num. Then I need a loop, an indefinite loop that it just goes on and on. So as always, I'm gonna use while true. And so now I want the guess of the user. I'm gonna choose an input and I say, what's the number? And I'm gonna give it a new line. Now I need to compare the number generated by the computer and the guess from the user. So I'm gonna say, if guess is equal to num, well, I won. So just print, you win. Yeah. Actually, if the guess is smaller than the number, well then I just print too low. And if the guess is greater than the number, well then I'm gonna just say, you guessed it, too high. Now you can notice that PyCharm highlights the num variable here, and the problem with this is that every time I prompt the user with an input like this in Python, every input is basically a string, and the smaller sign and greater sign actually wants a number to compare an integer with another integer. So what I need to do is actually every time the user inputs a number, I need to actually transform that into a number. So now the error goes away and I'm good to go. Okay, so now this should work. Right now, what's the number? Well, let's start from the middle, 5, too low, well, 7. Yes, 2 attempts and I already done it, woohoo! Okay, as you can see here, we're starting to have a problem, because when I win, I don't quit the thing, so I need to actually break out the loop, because I won. And secondly, what if I don't give it a number? So Python tries to convert this into an integer, but it can't. Well, let's see what happens if I do that. I don't give it a number. it's gonna throw an error. And this error is actually a value error. So what I can do actually is try to control the flow in this method. I'm just gonna provide a try except block. So try to do that, except value error. If there's a value error, I'm gonna say, well, that's not a valid number. Maybe I should write it better. And I'm just gonna continue. And what this does, it's gonna send me back to the beginning of the loop. So this should help me with catching the possible input error. One thing that I might do as well is actually keeping a score, because I don't want to just give you an indefinite loop. So I'm just gonna provide a score right here. And we're gonna start with 100, okay? And I can say, well, the score is greater than 0, so if you haven't finished your point, you can actually go on. And every time you make a mistake, I actually subtract 10 from your score. And when you win, I also want to give you the actual score, so you can know, and let's see if it works. So if I give it a letter, just gonna say that's not a valid number. What's the number? Just gonna do 5 again. Too high. 2. Yes. 90 points. Well, that's a solid win, I'd say. Solid win. Okay, so now it is working. It is working correctly, but we can make it actually a bit more intermediate. And one way to do that is actually provide a function, so being very functional about it. So I'm just gonna put all of this code inside a function, and I'm just gonna call it, well, game. Why not? So this must be indented. Now that I'm inside a function, this will work as well, but I can actually use a return statement here so that it just gets out. And actually, if I don't win, so the score just ends and I still haven't gotten the right number, I can actually print, sorry, you lost. And since I'm a good guy, I want to actually tell you what the number is. So the number is none. Now, one thing that we could do to actually make this a bit more interesting is actually provide a help. So some kind of information, pieces of information here and there that might help me, might help the user to guess the right number. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put that into a function as well. I'm going to put this inside the function so that I can always generate here. And I'm going to call this help user. And I want the number, of course. Now, the concept of this function is actually to get all the functions and get their response to then be given to the user. And what I could do is actually have an array of helper functions, and I just pick a random choice here in the help user function. So I can just say which, and I want to use the random choice because in an array you have multiple elements. So I'm just going to use random.choice, and I'm just going to say helper functions. And these helper functions is actually going to be a global variable, and I want this to be an array of functions. Once I get this, I can execute it. So the help text, so the output of the function will be which num, and I actually want to return it. So let's provide this helper function, and this could be anything you can think of, and this is probably where you could just put as much as you want, as many functions as you want, and the more the better, the more interesting the game would be. So for example, I can put one which is even, just take the number in and say if I want to return a string. I don't want to return booleans or numbers or anything. I want to return a string that the user can understand. So I'd say if num modulo 2 is equal to 0, which means it's even, then return it's even. If not, it's too simple. It's odd, or it's not even. Another function that I could provide, which is a big help, is actually if it's a prime number. So I could say is prime. And to do this, you can I actually do it like this. So I create a for loop. So what is a prime number? A prime number is a number bigger than 1 that can be divided only by itself and 1. So I'm gonna try a range of number between 2, because 1, well, everything can be divided by 1, and actually this operation means this is the floor operation. Basically give me an integer out of this operation. So if the number is gonna be 27.5, just give me 27, then I'm just gonna add 1. And the reason why I range over this is just to make it a little bit quicker, because if you think about it, you don't need to loop over all the numbers among 2 and the actual number, because if you get to a half and you haven't found a divider, well, everything between half and the number itself is going to be between 2 and 1, so it's not going to be an integer. Like this, I can just evaluate half the numbers, and for bigger numbers, if I had to think this for bigger numbers, it's just going to be a bit more convenient. So if num modulo number is equal to 0, well, then it's not a prime number. And the reason is because if I loop over a range of number and this number gets divided by one of these, well, then it's not a prime number. But if I get to the end of the range and I still haven't found a divider, well, then I can return it's a prime number. Another function that could be very useful is actually something like this. So I just tell you what can divide that number. And to do this, I'm gonna do it in a special manner. I don't want to try all the time, so I'm just gonna do it like this. I'm gonna provide a counter. I'm gonna provide a while loop. You could do this with for loops, with while loops. I'm using a while loop because it's just, I don't know, more convenient. So as long as the counter is smaller than 20, for example, so I'm just gonna give 20 tries, I'm gonna look for a divider. And how could I do that? I have the random function there, so I'm just gonna generate a random integer. And I'm gonna generate it between, I don't know, 3. Why 3? Well, because I don't want to divide it by 2, because I already have the isEven function, so that would be a little bit redundant, but you can start from wherever you want. And I'm just gonna give it floor operation -1. So why do I do this and not the entire range to the number? Well, because if you know that the random number from the computer is between 1 and 100 and the divider comes out like 87, it can be divided by 87. Well, of course it's going to be 87. I always want to give some help, but not too much. Once I have my divider, I can just divide it and I can return and I can return what's divisible by. So it's divisible by divider. If this doesn't happen, I want to increase the counter. So this is a try. This counts as one try, and in the end, if I have tried 20 random integers and I try to divide this number and it doesn't give me anything, well, then I can just return it doesn't have many dividers. If you try 20 times, it's probably gonna be like this. And since this help might happen multiple times, what I actually want to do, I don't want to give the same information twice. So I'm just gonna put my dividers bin, which is gonna be an array, and every time I find a divider, I'm just gonna append to it. Append divider. And what I want now is that if the divider is not in there, so dividers bin, then I can actually give you this as an answer. And this is basically for if you get this help one time and say it's divisible by 4, the second time you might actually get it's divisible by 4, but you already know that, so you don't need that information. Now that I have these many helper function, I can just put it there in the helper function. And if you notice, I am putting them as I'm putting it there as primitive functions. So I don't have the parentheses like this, because this operation would execute the function. But if I put it like this is just gonna give me the function object. And so I can randomly choose one of them and then execute it. And this is what will happen in the help user function right here. So it's gonna make a choice among the element of this array. It's gonna execute the choice with the right input, and it's gonna return the result of the function. Now, I don't want to give the same help twice. So what I can do is that every time I get a function, I actually remove it from the array. So what I want to do is helper functions. It doesn't helper functions. Oh my god. Dot remove which. So what I can remove is actually just the first two. So is even, because once you know it's even or odd, you don't need it anymore. And is prime. What I don't want to eliminate is actually this one, because as I provided, it's always gonna give me a different answer. So what I can do here, and I know this is not 100% correct, but I could just do it like this. So if the index of the element is different than 2, so basically 0, 1, 2 is not this one, well then you can actually remove it. So after a while you're just gonna have this function. Now that I have the help user function, what I can do, I can actually put it in the while loop, but I like to do it a bit randomly. So you just get random helps somewhere in the game. And to do that, I always gonna use the random module. And so in the while loop, I'm just gonna look for a random divider, which is gonna be a rand int, and I'm just gonna go 2 to 9. This is absolutely subjective. You can just put whatever you want. I'm gonna pick a random divider in this range, and actually what I want to do is provide a remainder. This remainder would be the thing that will choose if you get help or not. So every time I decrease the score, I increase the remainder by the same amount. So you're basically gonna have the opposite result. So I'm gonna say, well, if remainder is different from 0, because I don't want you to get help the first time around, and remainder is actually, so the random divider actually can divide the remainder, well then I want you to get help. So I'm gonna print it, and I had to print it because I'm gonna return an alt text, so I had to print it. And in the help user, I'm just gonna need the number. And as you can see, and every time you get some help, I want to adjust the score as well. So I'm just gonna put, I don't know, 2 points. I'm gonna take 2 points out of the score just to make it a little bit more interesting. What I can do now, since it's a function, I could say if name equal main, well then execute game. Okay, so let's try. Let's make it a little bit more complex. Let's try to 100 and let's try to run the game. So what's the number? Let's say 50. Too high. 25. Too low. 35. It's odd. Well, we got some help. Well, it's odd. 35 is too high. 25 too low. So maybe it's 31. Too high. So it's 29. Yes. As you can see, that was actually a crucial help that I received, because if I didn't know it was odd, I would put maybe 28, but actually it saved me some embarrassment. All right, so it works. Okay, so I'd say for this one, mission accomplished. Now, one further suggestion that I could give to improve this script, this mini game, is actually to provide as many helper functions as possible, because as you can see, helps actually helped, and they don't have to be difficult. They can be as simple as, I don't know, is divisible by 4, is divisible by 18, or is definitely greater than 30, whatever. But the more helper functions, the more interesting this game would become. Just as good practice, I'm gonna put this code on GitHub. You are free to visit my GitHub page, and if you want to add something to the helper functions, well, you're free to do so. Alright, so that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and that you learned something new, as I did actually. And I'll see you guys next week for another very interesting project. Peace.